The story begins just days before Lauren Sánchez was about to marry Jeff Bezos in what the world expected to be the most glamorous wedding of the decade in Venice, Italy, with yachts, gondolas, and celebrity guests flooding the ancient canals. But instead of glowing headlines about love and luxury, whispers started to spread about a lawsuit that hit her like a thunderbolt. A yoga instructor named Alana stepped forward, filing a federal case claiming that Lauren had stolen her idea for a children's book, The Fly Who Flew to Space. Alana said she had created her own book called Dharma, Kitty Goes to Mars, and accused Lauren of ripping off her story, word for word, transforming it into a bestseller that shot onto the New York Times list. The timing was unreal, almost scripted to cause maximum chaos. And suddenly, what was supposed to be a fairy tale turned into a legal circus. The media pounced, blogs exploded, tabloids dug into every messy detail, and the spotlight shifted from bridal gowns to courtroom drama. People started asking if this scandal was a coincidence or a calculated strike designed to ruin the biggest week of Lauren's life. And to make things wilder, whispers spread that none other than Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos' legendary rival, in the space race might be quietly bankrolling the lawsuit to hit Bezos where it hurt most. Right before he said, "I do," insiders hinted that this was not just about a children's book, but a precision move in a billionaire rivalry that had been simmering. For years, Lauren was suddenly cornered fighting accusations of plagiarism while social media poured fuel on the fire, and the entire world was watching, waiting to see if this storm would sink the Venice wedding or if the couple could survive the scandal that dropped right on their doorstep. The moment the lawsuit against Lauren Sánchez surfaced, the headlines shifted like a tidal wave because it was not just about a yoga teacher or a children's book. It was about power, betrayal, and timing so sharp it could cut through steel. The world had barely wrapped its head around the lavish details of her Venice wedding with Jeff Bezos. Before the whispers started to grow louder and louder, people asked, could this be the end? Before the beginning, was this the moment where the woman who went from news anchor to helicopter pilot to billionaire fiancé would see her carefully built world start to collapse? The yoga instructor Alana was no random voice. She had spent decades in the wellness space, building her name as a respected author, entrepreneur, and teacher. She had credibility and a platform, and that gave her accusations, a weight that tabloids love to amplify. She said her book, Dharma, Kitty Goes to Mars, was her creation, a playful story, blending mindfulness and imagination. And then suddenly, Lauren Sánchez released The Fly Who Flew to Space, a book that shot straight onto the New York Times bestseller list. And that success turned into the core of the lawsuit. Alana said it was not inspiration, it was outright theft. And when lawyers filed the paperwork, the timing was explosive because it was not weeks before the wedding, not months, it was days, leaving no room for the Bezos-Sánchez camp to spin the narrative smoothly. Insiders told reporters that the wedding week turned into a crisis control operation behind the scenes. Publicists, strategists, and even legal advisors worked overtime to figure out how to handle the sudden wave of coverage while paparazzi were lining up outside five-star hotels in Venice, expecting glamour shots. They were met instead with questions about plagiarism, lawsuits, and billionaire rivalries. And the more people dug, the more bizarre the story became, because whispers connected this lawsuit to none other than Elon Musk, the man who had spent years locked in a bitter feud with Jeff Bezos over the future of space travel. SpaceX versus Blue Origin Mars colonies versus orbiting stations. A battle of vision, ego, and billions. The theory spreading through insider circles was that Musk might be quietly fueling Alana's legal strike to embarrass Bezos right when the spotlight was brightest. And though there was no proof, the timing and the silence from Musk's usually loud persona kept speculation burning. After all, Musk had always been unpredictable, sometimes throwing shade openly on social media, other times letting chaos do the work for him. So, what if this was another move in his playbook, striking not through rockets, but through personal scandal for Bezos? The optics could not have been worse. Lauren's book was meant to be part of her evolving brand, positioning herself as more than just his partner, but as a public figure, an environmental philanthropist, and now a children's author with a space twist. It was supposed to tie neatly into Bezos' Blue Origin dreams and their shared narrative of being more than just billionaires, but visionaries. Yet with one lawsuit, that entire story flipped. Instead of headlines about inspiration, there were accusations. of theft instead of celebratory wedding features, there were questions about credibility and betrayal. And it was not just about Lauren, because in a scandal like this, everything splashes onto Bezos, his brand, his empire. Even Amazon stock could feel the ripple. And to make matters worse, people remembered that Bezos had already been through public humiliation before his messy divorce from Mackenzie. The leaked texts, the National Enquirer scandal, all of it had painted him as vulnerable, in ways no billionaire wants to be seen vulnerable. And now, just when he was set to remarry, the chaos returned, like history repeating itself. Some observers said the timing was too perfect to be coincidence, that this was strategic, a hit launched to destabilize him personally and professionally. And the longer the story lived in the headlines, the more traction it gained with every article, with every blog post, with every whispered tweet. The narrative of Lauren as a plagiarist grew, and that image is difficult to erase because the public loves a story of betrayal, especially when it is framed against the glitter of billionaire luxury. While Lauren was in Venice surrounded by opulence and gowns and jewels, the world was reading about lawsuits and revenge. It was the ultimate contrast. Fairy tale versus fallout, and then the backstory started to leak. People claimed that Lauren and Alana were not just strangers. They were once close yoga teacher and student collaborators. Even perhaps friends who once shared personal secrets and creative projects together. And if that was true, the lawsuit carried even more sting because betrayal between friends always hits harder, according to Alana. They even signed non-disclosure agreements when working on their creative ideas, which meant if Lauren did use her work, the legal and personal betrayal ran deep in the filings. Alana even pointed to details as specific as Lauren's Blue Origin flight suit, which she said was designed to mimic imagery from her Dharma Kitty manuscript. If true, it was not just about words on a page, it was about symbols, style, identity, the kind of personal touch that turns a legal claim into a public scandal. The blogs went wild with this detail because it was more than just dry copyright language. It was juicy, it was visual, it was emotional. And in Hollywood scandals, those three things always drive clicks. Lauren suddenly found herself portrayed as both a bride and a villain, and in the court of public opinion, villains sell the story better than brides. The irony is that Lauren's public image had been a roller coaster for years. When her affair with Bezos surfaced, she was branded the other woman in what became the most expensive divorce. In history, critics called her a gold digger, even though she had her own career as a journalist and helicopter pilot. Her history of dating powerful men, athletes, executives, and now the richest man in the world only fueled the narrative that she was strategic, not romantic. And even when she tried to step into philanthropic spaces, critics asked if it was genuine or branding. So when the plagiarism accusation landed, many saw it as another piece in a pattern, not a standalone event. Whether fair or not, perception became reality. And the lawsuit gave the media an easy storyline to stitch together: Lauren the schemer, Lauren the opportunist, Lauren who takes what she wants. And at that exact moment, Bezos was trying to present the image of stability, philanthropy, legacy with his Earth Fund and environmental pledges. But instead, headlines about his fiancée threatened to undermine the image of reliability that corporate America expects from him. And then the Musk angle returned, because insiders reminded everyone that Musk thrives on chaos. Unlike Bezos, who prefers control, Musk loves unpredictability. He posts memes, he sparks controversies, and somehow they make him more relatable to his fans. His chaos is part of his brand. So when Bezos' world turns chaotic, it benefits Musk because it chips away at Bezos' carefully curated image of control and trustworthiness. Government contracts, investors, partnerships. They all rely not just on hard numbers, but on reputation and image. So, if Bezos looks messy in the headlines, Musk gains ground without even launching a rocket. And this is why people believed Musk might be watching gleefully, even if he was not directly involved, because the ripple effects of Lauren's scandal play right into his hands as SpaceX keeps winning contracts and launching rockets. Blue Origin looks stuck behind wrapped in headlines that have nothing to do with space and everything to do with scandal. Imagine the visuals on one side: SpaceX, Rockets lighting the sky, live streams buzzing with millions, watching Musk tweeting jokes and triumphs on the other side, Bezos on yachts, planning weddings, fighting lawsuits, dealing with leaked texts, and watching the press tear into his partner. The contrast was impossible to miss. And it turned into the narrative that stuck Musk building the future. Bezos flaunting the present while his personal life crumbled. And the more this narrative took hold, the more dangerous it became, because in the billionaire world, perception is currency, perception drives influence. And in this story, perception was turning against Bezos. Fast Lauren was caught in the middle, but the effect of her scandal spread far beyond her. It touched Bezos' empire. And once the connection was made between her struggles and his image, there was no separating them anymore. The scandal did not stop with court papers being filed. Instead, it snowballed into something even larger, something that pulled in the entire Bezos empire from Amazon boardrooms to Blue Origin launchpads. The whispers in Venice were only the beginning. As every paparazzi photo of Jeff and Lauren stepping off a gondola, every smile, every wave was dissected online with captions suggesting betrayal or arrogance. Tabloids started running headlines about the children's book battle, calling it plagiarism. Gate and fueling endless debates about whether Lauren was a creative visionary or just another Hollywood figure accused of stealing an idea. The author who filed the lawsuit pushed forward with interviews claiming she had been silenced by powerful people until now, and suddenly Jeff found himself portrayed not as the unstoppable billionaire titan, but as a groom fighting shadows on his wedding week. This shift in narrative was dangerous because Bezos had spent years building a carefully crafted public image as the visionary builder of the future, the man sending rockets to space while running one of the most powerful companies in history. Now, the image looked fragile as rumors connected the lawsuit to Elon Musk, who was said to be laughing. From afar enjoying the chaos, people speculated that Musk had operatives feeding the media just enough information to keep the fire alive, creating a perception war that was harder to fight than any courtroom battle. Meanwhile, Lauren tried to maintain a calm front, but behind the scenes, insiders claimed she was furious that what was supposed to be her fairy tale moment was being stolen from her by a narrative she could not control. Her wedding dress fittings became secondary to meetings with lawyers. Her rehearsals for the grand entrance turned into damage control sessions with PR strategists. Guests arriving in Venice whispered in private whether the ceremony would even go on, while photographers camped outside, hoping to capture one. Wrong expression, one telling gesture from Bezos or Lauren, and every move seemed magnified. One misstep could become the image that defined the wedding forever. The lawsuit itself became symbolic, not just about a children's story, but about power, money, influence, and the ways rivals strike when stakes are highest. If Musk was indeed lurking behind this scandal, then this was not just an attack on Lauren, but a chess move aimed at shaking Bezos during the most vulnerable and public week of his life. As the wedding week continued, Venice became less of a romantic backdrop and more like the stage of a thriller where every character had a hidden role. Insiders whispered about secret meetings in candlelit hotels where lawyers exchanged drafts of emergency motions, and publicists crafted statements that were never released. The canals carried gondolas full of paparazzi who shouted questions about plagiarism, while Jeff and Lauren pretended not to hear them. Yet their silence only fed speculation. Was Lauren guilty of stealing the story? Or was she the victim of a perfectly timed smear campaign? The lawsuit documents were dissected online, line by line, with influencers comparing passages of the two books claiming the similarities were undeniable, while others defended Lauren, saying that children's stories about animals in space were common tropes, and that the timing of the lawsuit made it look like an orchestrated attack. The truth mattered less than perception, and perception was spiraling out of control. Jeff found himself being painted not as the conquering groom, but as the richest man alive who could not protect his bride from humiliation. And that image was dangerous because it gave Musk an edge in the rivalry that stretched from rockets to reputation behind the scenes. Amazon executives were nervous because shareholders were asking questions about distractions and leadership focus. Blue Origin staffers whispered that their boss was consumed by wedding drama instead of space launches, and in Hollywood circles, producers who had once courted Lauren for projects began to hesitate, wondering if she was now radioactive. Every layer of her life was suddenly under a microscope. Her past relationships were revisited. Her old interviews dug up even her fashion choices at pre-wedding parties were scrutinized for hidden messages. One headline declared Lauren dressed for war, while another suggested Jeff was cracking under pressure. Yet the wedding date drew closer, and the couple refused to cancel, determined to show strength, even as the scandal darkened the canals of Venice. And the story began to feel less like gossip and more like a chessboard, where billionaires, authors, lawyers, and rivals were moving pieces. Around one goal to weaken Jeff Bezos on the day he was supposed to stand tallest, the night before the ceremony, Venice pulsed with electricity. Not from romance, but from tension, as helicopters circled above and boats full of journalists clustered along the Grand Canal, desperate for a glimpse of the couple whose wedding had transformed into a worldwide courtroom drama. Jeff and Lauren were hidden inside a heavily guarded palazzo, their inner circle scrambling to control a narrative that refused to be tamed. Lauren's phone buzzed endlessly with alerts, lawyers pushing for quick settlements, advisors warning her to stay silent, while old friends begged her to speak out before the world defined her forever. Meanwhile, Jeff sat in another room, silent, staring out at the canal, as if calculating every possible move, like he was back in an Amazon war room years earlier, when every decision had the power to make or break his empire. But this time, the stakes were not profits. They were love, loyalty, and reputation outside the palazzo. Rumors swirled that Alana's team had secured a fresh round of evidence emails, drafts, even early sketches that they claimed proved Lauren had lifted the story directly. If true, it could turn the lawsuit into a scandal so massive that no spin could soften it. Whispers suggested these leaks were no accident, but part of a larger strategy to strike at the exact moment the wedding bells were supposed to ring. Some said Musk himself had met with Alana's lawyers secretly in a Paris hotel weeks before others dismissed it as conspiracy. But in Venice, conspiracy felt more real than coincidence. Guests began arriving cloaked in designer outfits and sunglasses, but even their smiles looked forced. Leonardo DiCaprio slipped through a side entrance, pretending not to notice the questions, while Hollywood producers whispered to one another that the wedding was starting to resemble a Netflix script in real time. Every hour before the vows felt like a countdown not to love, but to explosion. Jeff and Lauren knew that when they walked out into the flashbulbs tomorrow, the world would not just be looking at their rings, but at the shadow of a lawsuit hovering over every promise they made. And the question was no longer whether they could survive the scandal, but whether this marriage itself was being born already under siege. At the end of the day, Hollywood isn't just about glamour and red carpets. It's about power, secrets, and the scandals that often stay hidden until the truth forces its way into the spotlight. Whether it's courtroom drama, relationship, chaos, or behind-the-scenes deals, one thing is certain: the story never ends here. And as always, we'll be watching, digging, and uncovering the pieces others try to keep buried.